young Caribbean leaders taking their stand and taking their place in the political scene of America. That's up next on CaribNation. Hello, welcome to CaribNation. I'm Derrice Deane. Today we're going to talk about politics, Caribbean people running in the political system, and we have a bevy of fresh, young faces to tell us what they're going to do. My first guest is Paul Monteiro, and we have Jheanelle Wilkins and Gabriel Acevero. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to CaribNation. And I'll start by asking each of you to tell me a little bit about where you're from, and what about your background brought you to American politics? I'll start with you, Paul.
So I'm a native of Prince George's County, Maryland, but my parents immigrated here from other places. My dad came from Jamaica, a little town called Green Pond in St. James. He met my mother working at McDonald's, and then they had several kids together. And he always taught us to be a leader, you know, make your own way. Working for someone else, you're always vulnerable to someone else not wanting to help you. So he ended up starting his own business as a roofer, and he just taught all of us to be a leader, step up, and that's part of my drive to run for county executive in Prince George's County.
Fantastic. And you, Jheanelle. Now, Jheanelle, you are not running as a new person. I brought you here to tell us a little bit of what it's like to help these young people understand what they're getting into. So you have been a delegate for a little while. Tell us a little bit about what got you into it in the first place, and then we will talk about what you've been able to do.
Sure, absolutely, yes. Again, I'm Jheanelle Wilkins. I'm a Maryland State Delegate representing District 20, which includes the Silver Spring and Tacoma Park areas in Maryland. And I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, and I moved to the United States when I was 5 years old. I grew up still with a big Jamaican family in the Delaware area. And I think that just the patriotism that comes with being a naturalized citizen and the pride of being from the Caribbean and also being able to go to school here in the US and still seeing inequalities really gave me that passion and that interest in making this country better for everyone. So that is something that really has fueled my passion for public service.
Fantastic. And you, Gabriel, what is your background? Tell me a little bit where you're from and what brought you into politics.
Sure. First, thanks for having us on the show. Again, my name is Gabriel Acevero, and I'm a candidate for State Delegate for District 39, which in essence includes parts of non-municipal Gaithersburg, all of Montgomery Village where I live, parts of Germantown, parts of Clarksburg, and all of the town of Washington Grove. It is one of the most diverse districts in the state and in the country. And I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago. I was born, raised, moved to the United States in 2005, where my family moved to Montgomery County, Maryland. I went to school here. This is where I've done my organizing and my advocacy. And as someone who has been engaged in that work and engaged in that fight on social and economic justice issues, I quickly realized that a lot of the opportunities that were afforded to me aren't opportunities that are afforded to more people that look like me and have similar backgrounds. And so for me, it was an opportunity not only to serve, but an opportunity to represent as well. We have a very high West Indian diaspora in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, particularly in Maryland and Montgomery County, where Jheanelle and I are. And I think it was really important for me, not just running to represent the values, the shared values of those that live in my district, but to address some of the concerns that are still outstanding and some of the challenges that still keep people from, being their best self, successful, and getting the kind of opportunities that we know we can provide.
Let me come back to you, Jheanelle. Tell me a little bit about when you saw this inequality and saw the things that you wanted to deal with. Now, did that start in school? A lot of passion for these changes start when people are young and have the opportunities to run for student government and that sort of thing. What sort of young environment led you to that?
Right, sure, that's a great question. To me, it sort of escalated a bit. I started off volunteering and helping my community in terms of whether it's feeding the poor or various volunteer opportunities with my mother growing up. And so that was sort of how I saw and wanted to contribute to society and wanted to kind of make the world better when I was younger. But as I was doing that, I started learning more about policies and how policies actually impact people's lives, and more importantly, how policies impact different groups depending on their socioeconomic status, their race. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to get more into policy and advocacy. So then I started organizing around policy and kind of pushing from the outside and working to make change. And from there, that's when I realized I would like to be at the table to represent and really be able to make a change by being a part of the decision-making bodies. So for me, it has sort of escalated from volunteer service into more policy and advocacy, and now it's been an amazing experience being able to be at the table.
I'm glad you mentioned volunteerism, because that is something that we hear people complain about very often, that there are not enough volunteers, or people don't understand the benefit of volunteerism and how much you can learn from getting involved in volunteering. Let me talk to you, Paul, about what were some of the things that you got involved in early in terms of where that passion really developed.
I think from lived experience, it was just growing up, our family had to use welfare at different times, on free lunch in the public school system, seeing sort of the challenge of getting evicted from our home because, money was tight, and just having a very clear sense that there's a lot of people in that situation, but you don't hear many people talking about them. And if you do hear politicians talk about them, sometimes it's almost like blaming them for their situation. And that was obviously wrong, because I saw how hard my parents looked for work, tried to make a way for themselves and provide for our family. So it was that sense of somebody needs to speak up for the large number of people that are not takers. They're trying to make a way, they just need a little bit of help. And I'm grateful that we had some support from the county, from the state, from the federal government at different points in my upbringing. And then going to work for Barack Obama, starting for him in the Senate office, and then going to his first campaign, giving voice to a lot of folks that said, wait a minute, this country can be better if we just lived up to what we said we were about on paper. And seeing, starting from a place of folks saying, this is impossible. There is no way in the world America is going to elect Barack Hussein Obama. And black people were saying that, no, so, and I remember clearly at the very beginning of the campaign, the number one reason when we would poll it, why are you not supporting Barack Obama? Many African Americans would say the number one reason, it doesn't matter what I do. They've already decided. Some variation of that, this sense of helplessness. And just seeing the power of regular folks waking up and saying, actually, I could make a difference. If I just spoke up. In Prince George's County, 1 out of 5 registered Democrats even vote in these elections. So the majority of people are out here not using their voice. And so just seeing the power of when regular folks like me and my family, when we speak up, a lot of good can happen. On volunteerism, the president appointed me the head of AmeriCorps Vista, the Domestic Peace Corps, during the administration. And I mean, the science, the research is there. Like, volunteerism is a pathway back into the workforce. Volunteerism is a great outlet for the senior citizen who can only watch so much television. They have a heart to give. But unless you mobilize them, give them a pathway to do it, or ask them. Some people are just not even asked.
To be asked, yes.
And there's a huge, and I think the county is sitting on, because we have a huge military population, a huge Caribbean population, and a huge senior population. These are folks that have a heart, that are outward focused. No one's asking them. And I would change that if elected.
Fascinating. Jheanelle, let's talk a little bit about your first run. How difficult was that? What did you have to put in place? And how did you, where did you go to get the depth of what it took to put yourself out there?
Absolutely. So the first time I was elected was actually in 2014 to a local Democratic Party position with the Montgomery County Democratic Party. And so to organize and work to be elected for such a role that most people hadn't heard of, I was doing a lot of education around, this is what our local Democratic Party does, this is why it's important. And my passion for running at that time was exactly around what you just talked about, which is bringing more people into the table, making sure more voices are heard. I think one of the most difficult things about our political system is that sometimes you hear from the same people, and the loudest voices are often the ones that are heard. But there are so many people who are not in the room, and we have to go out and reach them. And so that was my passion. That's why I ran for the Montgomery County Democratic Party and successfully ran for that. Last year, I was appointed to the House of Delegates to represent District 20 after there was a vacancy in my district, because the local party is responsible for appointments when there are vacancies. And so that appointment process was very rigorous as well. There were several other competitors, and we were all making our case. We had several public forums, and we're all sort of saying what our stances are and why we should be the person selected. So I think that staying true to the vision that I had and what had propelled me to get to that point, from the advocacy, the volunteerism, and also the work that I'd done with the party, was something that I really just made sure shined through in everything that I was doing to really make the case for why I should be the person. And so every day I make sure that in Annapolis, at our state capitol, I live out that vision, because there's about 6 million people in the state of Maryland, and there are only 141 people in the House of Delegates. So really making sure that place and that seat that I hold, that I'm making sure that I'm working on that vision for the people of Maryland every single day.
Gabriel, you're fresh also in this, in terms of the big political picture, so to speak. Tell me, what is it about who you are that you're bringing to this, and how do you want to project that?
Yeah, sure. So first, I think it's important to point out that what I say often, on the campaign trail, and I think it's very much true, the fundamental question that any candidate should be asking themselves before running for office is not why you're running, but what have you done in the community that you're running to represent, right? See, I was raised on the principle, good old Trini upbringing, that you aren't fit to lead if you first aren't prepared to serve. And so over the past many years that I've been in the United States, that's exactly the work that I've been engaged in, service. And when you have a mother that constantly inculcate in her children's mind that service to mankind is service to God, that leaves an indelible mark left an indelible mark on my siblings and I, in terms of what we should do and how we should give back, right? And while, as you rightly pointed out, I'm fresh to running for office, this is not the first time that I've been engaged in the political process. I've been around for quite some time, been doing the work in terms of organizing and advocacy. And so just now seeing the opportunities that they're available to run for office and to represent my community, and seizing on those opportunities and bringing those lived experiences, whether it's my lived experiences growing up in Trinidad and Tobago or my time here in the United States, using that lived experience to advocate for people, to advocate for my constituents. As I mentioned earlier, my district is one of the most diverse districts in the state and in the country. We have a high immigrant population, whether it's from the Caribbean, Central America, or West Africa. And I think especially now more than ever, when we see vitriol coming from this White House and this administration, that it's important that we elevate the voices of immigrants and immigrant families, and we fight for immigrants. And so that's why I'm proud to have been endorsed by Somos Casa, one of the largest immigrant advocacy organizations in the United States, in the Mid-Atlantic region. And I think that informs the work that I do. It informs the way that I advocate for people, for my constituents, and it'll certainly inform the way that I legislate when elected.
Who would you say was your mentor, the person you really wanted to emulate, each of you? Let's start with you, Paul.
In a lot of ways, my dad. Life threw him a lot of curveballs, a lot of brick walls, whatever you want to say, and it was this sense of, you got to make a way. Don't wait for someone to tell you yes or say, I'll open the door for you. Make a way. Don't give up. And like I said, he's a roofer now. Chasing work, making work, finding work, to provide for the family. So I try to emulate him in everything I do. Every job I have, I give 110%. And the president, I think, working for him for 10 years, just seeing him and the fear going in of like, this guy is going to be not anything like what he appears on television. He's going to be a jerk or not as smart. And to see somebody over the course of 10 years not really change.
Yeah.
And behind the scenes when the cameras are off, probably the smartest person in the room who speaks last. Because he doesn't need to show off to any. He's always looking to
learn. He's always taking in first.
Always learning from you. And that's another thing my dad taught me is like, if you listen to somebody, they'll tell you all about themselves. The people that run in and just are running their mouth,
So true.
they'll tell you stuff they don't mean to. And so listen before speaking. And the president walked that walk and just had a care for people. You know, he was the guy that, you know, it didn't matter who you were, he'd treat you with some level of respect and concern. And so I think that just proves to me, especially as I come across people that are very accomplished in what they do, very smart people, but they feel like that gives them license to treat you less than. It's like, well, you know, I've seen another example of somebody who, you know, you can walk around thinking you're the smartest person in the world, but that does not mean you're actually pretty foolish if you feel like that's how you can engage people. So those two people, I would say.
It's very important. Something that I often remind people, and that is listening is just so vital. In this job, I have to listen to what people are saying a lot. And I've learned that you can really learn so much by listening to what people don't say very often.
Absolutely.
So it's very important, and that's a lesson that I'm really glad that you raised, the importance of listening.
Right.
What about you?
Absolutely. I would say my role model is absolutely my mother. She came to the United States as an adult with nothing here but her family, and really was able to make a life for us, started her own small business, and although we were on free and reduced lunch growing up with a single mother who struggled at times, my older brother and I, we never wanted for anything because my mother just made sure that she found a way always to make it happen. And so I think that grit, that determination, that passion for family, and that vision for education, and that if we were just able to get through school and go to college and get a higher degree, that she just instilled that in us and has always supported our passions. So I absolutely you know, make sure that I try to emulate my mother and her kindness and her passion in everything that I do. And also, especially with it being Black History Month, want to lift up Shirley Chisholm, a woman who just broke so many records and was unbought and unbossed.
That's right.
Everything that she did was about her community, her
that's
district, not the conventional politics. And I think that at this time, that's something that we can all learn from, and that we should all make sure that we try to emulate and really lift her up.
Very proud lady. I tried to interview her, and she was just at the very beginning of Alzheimer's. I think she was very conscious of it, and she says, "I don't think I would be as articulate as I would want to be."
Wow.
She didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, "We only need a few minutes." But she was really very concerned about that. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I think it's important to point out that Shirley Chisholm was also West Indian,
Yes, of course.
Bajan, right? Grew up in Barbados.
Yes.
Yep. She's done amazing work. In terms of the individuals who influenced you know, me in a great way in the work that I do, my parents, Michael and Ingrid Acevero, just raising 6 children, struggling to make ends meet, but always ensuring that, you know, our needs were met, and you know, just instilling in us the value of appreciating what you have, right? And so they've always been engaged civically. My mother was a 30-year, now retired public employee. She was very active in her union, PSA, the Public Services Association, which is a very active union in Trinidad. And I remember, you know, my first experience, you know, getting civically engaged was on a picket line with her. Her and her coworkers were fighting for better working conditions because at the time the office that they were working in was in essence in decrepit condition, right? And so just using the union as a vehicle to bring about that type of a change in the workplace, not only for herself but her coworkers as well, and that left an indelible mark. And till today, you know, my parents are still very much engaged in their communities, and so are my siblings and I. And I think that's really important. They've served as, you know, role models, not just for me, but my other siblings. But who I'd also point out as having, you know, great influence in my life is Asa Philip Randolph, who was also a labor leader. He was a labor organizer, president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. And I think a lot of his life sort of resembles mine in the sense that now I work in the labor movement. I'm a labor organizer. And what he struggled for then are things that we're still struggling for today, which is an inclusive economy, one in which that works for working people, and we're caring about those who are at the margins of our society. And so just the work that he has done, the tenacity and the effort that he put in, not just to advance economic justice and social justice, but also civil rights, what folks don't know is that, he was one of the individuals that was responsible for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Oftentimes when we talk about that day, we tend to focus on Dr. King's very memorable speech, and it was a great speech, but remembering the organizers, the people who made that day possible, the people that rallied people who were trying to fight for a better life, better wage, and to be recognized equally before the law. And so my parents and Asa Philip Randolph, who was not only a labor leader, but I'm proud to say a member of my fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, just someone who played just such an important role at that time and given us so much to aspire to and so much to believe in. Because today, when we look at this economy that doesn't work for working people and we're seeing legislation that doesn't work for working people, it's now important and incumbent upon us to do something about that.
Well, fantastic. I'm really impressed by the confidence that you guys have, for one thing. And I wonder whether...
It's a West Indian thing.
I was just going to say, because this is something that we get accused of a lot, that we're overconfident and we think we know it all. But I want each of you to talk a little bit about that West Indianness, that Caribbeanness that gives you that strength and that confidence to project yourself, while at the same time being able to relate to those who are less fortunate, those who have the problems that you want to solve, and talk about how you plan to incorporate that within your platform. And I'll come back to you, Jheanelle, because you've already started doing some of that. So let's hear from how you've done that.
Sure, absolutely. I think that being from the Caribbean, it does instill a sense of confidence, and I think it comes from our history. We have overcome a lot, whether it's natural disasters, whether it's poverty, but we are just so rich in resources, whether it's natural resources or talent of the Caribbean. And so I think that it's just so important to ensure that we tap into our roots and where we're from and never forget the opportunity that we have here, and ensure that we build upon that and that we're not the only ones that are able to achieve and have those opportunities, right? Making sure that there are people who are coming behind us who we're helping and mentoring along the way who can also achieve this, that we will see a lot more Caribbeans in this country who are making every single field. So I think that because of that, my passion and the work that I do is really about greater opportunity. It's about educational equity, making sure that in my district there are some schools that are overcrowded, some schools where students with disabilities and students who speak a different language don't achieve at the same rate as other students, and it's making sure that we're championing and being a voice for those students and their parents. It's about the mass incarceration system that plagues our country and our state, and doing everything that we can to really shift the tide and make sure that we clean up our books, that people are not being unjustly locked up and then held in jail when it comes to bail and not being able to get out. So I think that we are a nation that we overcome, we persevere in everything that we do, and I think that we bring that to the work that we do and that passion. And I'm just really proud to be from Kingston, Jamaica, and be here in the United States. I think that's a testament to what can happen in terms of the American dream. So thank you so much again for having us and for this opportunity.
Paul, what's your...
Yeah, I would think it's the resilience that you're taught, because there's no expectation, and we grew up poor, so if you ever visit Green Pond, Jamaica, where my dad's from, I mean, there's not much money there. So I think you're just taught not to expect anything to be handed to you. And so maybe it's confidence, but it's a sense of, if you've done the work, your homework, you're qualified, you're credible to do this, why not you? So I'm not expecting anyone to give it to me, but if I do what's necessary for it, I'm going to get it. And the sense of, why not me? Even if there's no one in my family that's done this or done that, or no one in that field that looks like me, I'm qualified. And so maybe it is confidence. I'm sure a lot of it is, but it's a sense of resilience of, you can tell me no. And I think growing up poor and with immigrant parents, it's a sense of what I see on TV, what I see in the newspaper, what I see in the conversation, the standard conversation. I don't really see me in it.
Exactly.
It's like, well, that's reality, and I'm not in it because it doesn't match anything I see day to day. So you're sort of making your own way and realizing there's actually much more to the world than what's presented in the sitcom or
Yes,
on the
of course.
newspaper, front page.
The real
And
world.
The real world. And it's like, well, this is what it takes to get to my goal. I'm going to work as hard as possible, maybe do a couple jobs to get to where I need to go. Why not me? Yeah.
What do you say?
No,
Well, you did mention before, of course, that resilience and what you said, that God will help you once you do your part.
Yeah, no, I think resilience is certainly a trademark of West Indians. No one is independent of their history. Where you come from shapes who you are.
True.
And I think something about growing up in the Caribbean or being raised by West Indian parents, there's that sense of resilience that press on. There's still work that still needs to be
Keep
done.
going. Don't
right?
give up.
Exactly. And despite all the adversity, you get up tomorrow and you go at it again. And so being raised in a West Indian household is, is very disciplined, right? There's work to be done, be about that. And so I think if we look at a lot of West Indians who have contributed so much to the social and economic fabric that is America, whether we're talking about Shirley Chisholm or Stokely Carmichael or Marcus Garvey and so many other names, right? These are individuals with a strong sense of self, resilience and determination. One of the watchwords of Trinidad and Tobago is discipline, tolerance, and production. The key thing being production, right? Being productive, especially with whatever it is that you undertake.
Yeah.
And so I extrapolate a good bit of what I've learned growing up to the work that I'm doing now and to the race that we're running, ensuring that we're talking to every voter about the issues that matter to them, but also talking about the issues that we're hoping to address. And I think just growing up a boy from Cuba in Trinidad and going to school in the capital in Port of Spain, and just learning so much from that experience, and then now coming to the United States, living here, making a home and a community for myself. I'm not independent of that history, and that informs the way I advocate for my community, informs the way that I go about campaigning, and so it's not something that you can separate.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I'm so proud of you guys, and I'm really energized, and it's very interesting to talk with you and to hear who you are, hear your views, and I really wish you all the very best in what you do, because you obviously are committed and you're ready, you're prepared to take on. And I'd say the world, here they come. Look out for these Caribbean people. Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure talking with you.
Pleasure. Thanks.
And good luck to you all.
Thank you.
Take care. That's it on CaribNation this time. You have seen a great group of young people who are prepared and committed to take on the world, and we wish them all the best. Until next time, thanks for watching CaribNation. I'm Derrice, Deane, and remember, our motto is one people, one culture, one Caribbean, one nation.